So one of the things I'm always asked is, hey, what do you think the trends are going to be? What should we be preparing for the next year or the next quarter? And one of the things that we do is we try to stay ahead of those things. So here are the three things that I think are going to be the big trends or the big things in 2026. The first thing is these no alcohol drinks. So not only the mocktails, which we talk a lot about, the margaritas without the tequila in it, and the bourbon drinks, the old fashions, and some of those drinks without any alcohol. We're going to see that continue. So the mocktails are going to continue to grow. There's no doubt about that. But also the other drinks in that category, no alcohol, like the functional drinks that had extracts, the kind of the good for you drinks, those also are going to grow. The second thing is CBD and THC drinks. We've had a heck of a time in 2025 trying to get the states to get their laws kind of in order, because there's so many different laws in different states. But that's kind of coming together, and you'll see THC drinks growing as well. And then the third thing is these. We continue to be asked to deliver beverages that have lower calories, and so now we have more tools in the toolbox, because 20 years ago we didn't have that many no calorie sweeteners, and the ones we had were artificial. But now we have some natural sweeteners to work with that have no sugar or no sweetener, no calories in them, and we're going to continue to see that grow as well. So we predict trends by first watching the data that we collect. So we know what customers who are going to develop beverages for in the next quarter, the next year, what are the flavors they're asking for? What are the kind of projects they want to do? So we can kind of watch our own customers or potential customers, what are they developing? So, and they tend to be, trend centers. They're looking for those kinds of things. And we have quite a bit of data internally that we don't share outside people, but we do share with our clients on what those trends could be. We also look what's happening and watch what's happening in other countries. So oftentimes you'll see some of these trends just come from Europe. So if you pay attention to what's going on in Europe, especially Europe, also the Asian countries, but in America, it's the European ones that kind of set the trends for us. We pay attention to what they're doing. The next thing we do is we pay attention to the flavor trends in other parts of the food and beverage industry. Like, for instance, what's happening in candy? You'd be surprised at how many flavors make it into drinks the year after they become very popular in gum, for instance. We've seen that happen time and time again. So we pay attention to that. And then we also pay attention to what the young folks are eating and drinking, because a lot of the trends actually start from, the younger Americans and make their way up. So we pay attention to that as well. And when you put all of these kinds of data and the things you watch and observations together, you can kind of figure out what these trends are going to be for the next year. So these trends have changed. I've been doing this at Flavorman for 33 years and even longer at another company. So I remember back as early on when we had Flavorman, it was juices. So all of a sudden there was this explosion in the juice market, refrigerated juices that just were, sold at the stores in the refrigerated section, because it used to just be, cranberry juice, orange juice, grape juice. And then all of a sudden it was, put blends together, add more fruit concentrates, so there are higher fruit concentrates, and then lower fruit concentrates, but add more flavor to them. So there was all of this explosion of choices in the juice market. And then it seemed like functional drinks. All of a sudden, Flavorman was asked to be doing all these different functional drinks, like adding. I remember we had a project for a brand which we can talk about called Nutri-Soda. And they were one of the first that did like a soft drink, and they put vitamins and minerals and extracts in them to make them kind of, the good. They call themselves the good for you soda. So we saw lots of these functional drinks putting new ingredients in drinks that we'd been, drinking forever to make them good for you. And then we saw the energy drink category explode, and it's still, it's a big market now. But back in the, what I call the Wild West, we were doing hundreds of different energy drinks, putting all kinds of ingredients that we'd never used before in a drink. They've been using other foods, putting them in drinks if we could, and that's still going. Then everything was low calorie after that. What can you do low calorie? Even energy drinks went diet. And by the way, part of the energy you get from energy drinks was from the sugar. So we started taking that out, but a lot of low calorie drinks, mostly inspired by the advent of sucralose. When that came around, all of a sudden, it was stable. It tastes close to sugar. Of course, there's going to be some people who watch this and say, "You got to be kidding! I hate it. It doesn't taste like sugar," but it was close, and it spawned this whole kind of trend of low calorie drinks. And then a trend that we're still in, ready to drink cocktails. I mean, I can't tell you how many drinks Flavorman's developed that are, ready to drink cocktails and in cans and bottles and, big packages, small packages, everything, and it's, I think it's the fastest growing part of the alcohol market right now, are ready to drink cocktails. And then, now we've been working on THC drinks and CBD drinks for a long time. But now as you're starting to see that really take hold. And we have a lot of projects going on with those kinds of beverages that contain THC or CBD. One of the things that you see in these ingredient trends are cyclical occurrences. For example, for a while, we were doing all these good for you drinks that had better ingredients in them. And there was a lot of activity in that area. And then it kind of transitioned over, and then it was more indulgent kind of ingredients with and products that had calories in them. It just kind of went back. And now we're seeing this, better for you kind of ingredients kind of coming back to us too. Another thing are drinks with or without alcohol. So, we have this ready to drink market that's really going, but also at the same time, this mocktail market is growing like crazy. So, alcohol, yes, no alcohol, no, what are we going to have next? It'll come back around. And in fact, I'll just give you a little story. Is when I started in this industry in 1989, I worked at Brown-Forman, and they had a hard time selling bourbon. Now, if you know what happened in the bourbon market in the last 10 years, I mean, they couldn't make enough. So, we had bourbon, they could, they barely sell. In fact, they had a product called Early Times that was a bourbon, and they didn't sell enough of it, so they changed it to Early Times whiskey. It was a little cheaper to make, so they could sell it on the shelves for a little cheaper, and the bourbon wasn't selling. And when the bourbon market got hot again, they switched it back. So it became Early Times bourbon again. And, now as you see, and if you read and you watch what's going on, that bourbon industry is not doing so well right now. And, Brown-Forman put out some numbers just yesterday where their market was down quite a bit. So, you see the cycle in alcohol, and in that example, it's bourbon. And then you also see like soft drinks, for example. When I started in the industry, it was full sugar. That's about all we had to work with anyway. And then we went to low calorie. So, we went to a low calorie version with artificial sweeteners. And then we went to a low calorie version with natural sweeteners, that they could still call their product natural if they wanted to. And now you see things that are going back to full sugar, because consumers want some full sugar. And you see on the complete opposite end, you see other products coming back with no sugar. They want the smallest amount of sugar because the folks that are coming up in this market really don't want to have that much sugar. And older folks like me, we taste that stuff and we're like, oh my God, it tastes terrible. There's no sugar in here. But that just shows you the cyclical nature of the sweetener, whether it's artificial or natural in the U.S. market. If you have a brand, your ingredients really tell your story. So we've seen things that over time have changed, or, been improved or eliminated over time. One of the things that I've seen in my career are, for instance, with juices. When we first started Flavorman, we worked for one of the biggest juice companies in the country, and they had, juices of orange, and, they had a strawberry juice and a grape juice and a grapefruit juice. And then they started putting blends together. They wanted and they put in, like raspberry passion fruit, orange, guava, banana. I mean, they went all out doing blends. And that trend has stuck with us. Now, if you go in the juice section, there are all kinds of blends, where 30 some years ago, that wasn't the case. We already talked about sweeteners. We had full sugars. We go to low and no calorie sugars. Sucralose is here to stay, and more are being developed over time. So there's, some competition. And now we've seen these no calorie sweeteners that are natural, like monk fruit and stevia and erythritol. So we see, that trend of the low or no calorie has stayed with us over time. And now there's improvements in the category. And then the third thing they'll just tell you about that I think is important are the extracts that we use. When I started in the business, again, we didn't use many extracts, maybe ginseng and a few other, extracts that are now seem kind of old fashioned, but over time, and I'll tell you, especially with the energy drink market and the things that we developed, we started using things like rhodiola and yerba mate and ginkgo biloba, ginseng, guarana, all kinds of kind of cool extracts which have stayed over time. And now we use them in all kinds of beverages. So when you talk about trends, one of the things that's important is you got to act quickly. So it's important to be early in a trend, but it's even more important to be first. Because when you're first, you become like king of the hill, and then other people have to trail you. So my friend Joe Herron, who I've known for many years, we've developed a lot of products for different companies that he started. He has this saying about delays are poison in the beverage industry. So the longer you wait and hang around or whatever, it just becomes poison to a brand, because you won't be first or second. You may be 50th, you probably missed the trend, or it's just too difficult to get for a distributor to pick you up. So trends, you have to be quick. And you have to know what you're doing. You have to be ready. You have to execute. And one of the things that I can tell you is if you're going to do that, you better work with a company that has experience, or a team, if it's your own team, to have experience with beverages, because they can act much quicker than either a team or a company that does not. And I can give you one good recommendation of a company that has experience. They know what's happening. They've done these kinds of things before, and that's Flavorman. And Flavorman will help you change what the world is drinking.